So for today's webinar, these are the topics that I'm going to be talking about. I'm of course going to be introducing you to Cambridge University Press, its history, and the kind of publications and products that we are publishing. And then I'll move on to the publishing landscape for journals, mainly journals and of course books. And after that, we will talk about journals submitting, selecting, writing, and how to cope with the peer review process of journals. And finally, I'll talk about the open access policy and the journals and the agreement that we have signed with the Chinese University of Hong Kong in terms of read and publish of our journals. So, yep. Let's see this. So firstly, Cambridge University Press, we are actually a department of the University of Cambridge. Okay, so we were actually founded in 1534, quite a long time ago. We became part of the University Press and Assessment Group last August after merging with our Cambridge Assessment fellow institutional company. So now, as a very prestigious, as part of a prestigious university, we are always looking forward to investing in digital publishing for our future projects. And also as a global publisher, we do want to publish the best scholarship wherever it comes from. So what does the press publish? So basically, as you're aware of, we publish peer-reviewed journals for the science, the hard sciences, social sciences, and humanities. Currently, it's around 400 plus titles. We also publish research monographs, but those are mainly in the social sciences and humanities. We also do major reference works such as Cambridge Histories, Cambridge Handbooks, and also we have actually started or launched a new preprint platform, which we call Cambridge Open Engage. So basically this platform allows researchers to upload and encourage more sharing of their early research, either papers or posters or any related discussion in their field of study. And lastly, we also have launched a new product which we call Cambridge Elements. It's actually a series of short books of around maybe 90 to 100 pages, organized within the specific disciplines, and it's meant to be a digital first product. So that's within the academic research field itself. Within learning, such as higher ed and professional, we also publish textbooks, courseware. The most recent acquisition by the press is Books. We also have advanced online courses that are more meant for professional training. And of course, lastly, we also have a small retail kind of team selling Bibles, and we have a actual bookshop, a physical retail bookshop in Cambridge itself. So let's talk a bit about the academic publishing landscape. Currently, there are over 25,000 journals, okay, 25 journals, 1,000 journals actively publishing. So in this case, we are referring to peer-reviewed journals and mostly in English. Of the 25,000 journals, there are more than 2 million journal articles publishing each year. And of course, we also have academic books of about 200,000 publishing every year. The market value in terms of the revenue is actually quite large for the science and the technology side of the publishing business. It's worth at least around almost $14 billion, okay, in 2020. For the medical sciences, is about 13 billion. And social sciences and humanities is much smaller, around $4.5 billion. So nevertheless, as you can see from the market value of academic publishing. There are actually many publishers existing and publishing their products in the market globally. So some are pretty small, some are medium sized, and some are very large. So within this group of publishers, we also have university presses. So they are typically not for profits. We also have global commercial publishers. Also, there are some publishers that are regionally based, they are nationally based, or they are boutique publishers in the sense that they are very specialized in a specific subject area or discipline. And of course, self-publishing is also an area that is coming up, but it's actually less used by academics for research. So this is more for textbooks. So you might be wondering, what is a university press? If this is the first time you come across such a term. So basically, university presses are not for profit. Okay. So what does this mean? It means that we do need to earn some profit, but the profit is just used to sustain our future investment in our publishing plans and projects. So this is required because we have to stay relevant to our key readership and users and authors. Okay, so this is the model, the business model for most university presses, which is also the same for OUP and most British university presses. For North American university presses, they are modeled a little bit differently. So they are actually subsidized by their parent university. So every year they will get a specific budget to publish a specific number of journals or books, and they can work around their plans based on the budget itself. Nevertheless, the publishing decisions by the stresses typically falls on the academic quality and the market itself. They do want to ensure they do publish books that are of high quality and also were accepted by the market generally. For commercial publishers, such as those publishing in higher ed or college textbooks, they focus on learning materials. Okay, in this case, learning materials can be books, can be digital, can be platforms. Okay, so they cater to big courses, typically at the first or second year university undergraduate students. We also have publishers that cater for professionals, maybe in finance, business management, uh, medicine, or even law or engineering. And lastly, we also have large commercial academic publishers that publish across a wide spectrum of subjects and disciplines. Some that you may be aware of, such as Taylor and Francis, Springer Nature, Elsevier, Sage, and of course, some of the smaller ones. So all publishers, regardless of whether they are the university press or commercial publishers, they of course try to enforce a high standard for their uh, publishing products, such as journals or books. But typically, commercial publishers have a different business model simply because they have to answer to their shareholders. So they must make a profit to answer to their shareholders. So sometimes the decisions taken on publishing certain books or journals will be quite different from what we do here at the press itself. So for the last 10, 20 years, there have been a lot of evolution of the way academic publishing has evolved in terms of delivering or disseminating the research output from researchers. And of course, there are also disruptions. The major one is, of course, technology. Most journals nowadays are published online, and also they are also some of them are actually published digital only, so they don't even provide print issues anymore to libraries or readers. And of course, AI, artificial intelligence, machine learning also starting to be used by publishers. Okay, one of them is Springer Nature, which they actually tried to experiment with AI in publishing a book. Okay, and the next one that has caused a bit of disruption over the last 3 to 4 years is the open access movement, which I'll talk a little bit more in my later slides. And of course, preprints, which came into popularity during the pandemic in the last 2 years. So basically, due to COVID and more researchers, mainly in the medical sciences, are preparing medical and biological sciences were actually willing to share the early research on preprint servers. Yeah, so preprint servers are actually papers that have not been peer reviewed. Okay, and of course we have impacts and impact factors and other metrics that are being used to assess the output of researchers, and free content. So you may have heard of Science Hub. So this considered as an illegal hub in that sense. Uh, However, there are other routes of obtaining papers, okay, or research through green open access. Okay, that is the alternative. And of course, due to the pandemic, there's more digitization of scholarship, and speed of publication has increased quite a fair bit, okay, for most journals. So this background of competitive competition among researchers like yourself trying to get yourself published in a high impact journal. So the challenge is that you need to make your research stand out among all the rest to ensure that you can get published in a good journal, and of course get tenure or get promoted. So now I'll try to share some tips to let you uh, see what are the ways that you can do to try to improve your chances of getting published, especially in one of our journals. So the first step is to select the right journal. Okay, so you need to think like an editor, a journal editor. Okay, so you have to read the aims and scope, okay, of the journal itself, and of course the submission guidelines, the manuscript submission guidelines. Make sure that your paper is within the scope of that journal that you wish to submit. Quickly review the recent publications of the journal, the recent issues, and check if they are of the same genre or at the same level that your paper is written at. Find out the key topics that they have covered and the style of the coverage. Okay, so here when I say the style is more of the kind of the methodology, the kind of leanings that they have in terms of the discussion or arguments. So try to check if your paper is also at the same level as them and also related to what have been published in the journal. And then look at the general hierarchy of the journals in your field itself. Okay, so how significant are your findings to the understanding of your discipline? So in this case, it's more of what is the contribution that your paper will make. Definitely, it will be a novel. The research output will be novel. But whether it is significant enough, you have to look at the hierarchy of the journals in your field. So for those top ranked journals, they typically will want something that's very significant, something that will affect globally the research in that field itself. Maybe for the mid-range journals, they may not be so particular, as long as there's some contributions. It need not be global, maybe regionally, or contributes to the understanding of a specific part of the theory itself, then they would be happy to take it on. And of course, for the rest of the journals, they might have other criteria in terms of assessing your paper. And then you have to think for yourself too. Okay, think what is the journal's policy on peer review and open access. Okay, you need to know whether the journal is using which model of peer review. Is it a single blind, double blind, or open peer review? And also for open access, do they charge for open access? Typically, most journals will they'll charge for publishing a paper as open access, and you need to find out how much they charge. Okay. There are some predatory open access journals out there. Okay, so they do provide you an option to publish your paper as go open access, but the fees are not that high. But because they are predatory, so they are not interested in doing a good job in terms of peer reviewing the paper, improving the quality. So they might just do a very quick review and provide very bare and not very useful comments, and then just publish the paper so that they can collect the fees immediately. And after that, they may not even submit the paper or the issue of the journal for indexing with the major databases. So that would mean that your paper, once published, is lost in among all the 25,000 millions of articles that's published every year. Okay, so that means it wouldn't have any impact at all. Nobody will read it, nobody will cite it. Okay, so there's something that you do not want it to happen. So avoid predatory journals as far as possible. because your institution, Chinese University of Hong Kong, has signed the transformation agreement with Cambridge, so you are eligible to actually publish, okay, without paying the Go Open Access fee. I'll talk about that later. And then, of course, you have to find out if the journal allows you to comply with your institutions or funders' policies, okay? And what are the fees that are charged, like I mentioned earlier, okay? So what are the APCs? That's what they call it. And also there are some journals that would have submission fees and color figure charges too, okay? So this one you need to check on the journal's homepage. So after you have selected a specific journal or a short list some journals that you wish to submit your paper to, you have to think about writing the manuscript, because I assume you have done all the research, the results, everything is there. Now it's just writing out the paper, drafting it out. So here we have what we call the ABC of effective writing: accuracy, brevity, and clarity. For accuracy, the key items to focus on is to only submit the article, okay, submit the articles, the manuscript when it's fully complete, okay, everything is included. You've done everything that needs to be done. All the sections are in there. And try to obey the rules, okay, in the submission guidelines. They will tell you what you need to do and what you should not do, okay. Always check the references to make sure that you don't miss out any references. And of course, the data, okay, double check, cross-check your data again to ensure, don't make some omissions, in terms of providing the data. And lastly, look at your language itself, English language, okay, grammar and spelling, okay. So if you're a non-native English speaker, you can consider engaging a freelance editor to help you with it, okay, so that, when an editor first looks at the manuscript, they won't be put off by the poor language. So secondly, for brevity, it means you have to be concise and get to the point, okay? Academic writing is different from fictional writing or documentary writing, okay? So academic writing, you have to get to the point and don't drag out the introduction as far as possible. Yeah, just get to the point. Keep in mind that a longer manuscript is not necessarily a better one. Okay, it doesn't mean you max out your manuscript at the maximum number of words. That means the higher chances you get. Okay, that's not necessarily the case. And a way to phrase each paragraph is to have the first sentence state the main point, the main argument, and then the rest of the sentences in that paragraph to support this. Okay, this is a good way, easy way for a reader to understand the way you structure your argument, okay, and how you support them. And of course, simple writing is the best, if possible, not to add too much jargon to allow the readers to understand the research that you have done. Okay, because sometimes not just academics will read your papers. Sometimes journalists may read your papers. Policymakers may also read your papers. So this is also a group of readers you may wish to attract to read your papers and cite it. Okay, and of course, keep within the word limit. So thirdly, for clarity, so basically just make sure the paper is well organized with a clear message throughout. Okay, so here I said state your contribution at the start and not in the conclusion. Okay, this sometimes certain authors will make such a mistake. Okay, so they forgot about talking about the contribution of the paper at the start. Okay, so why is it important to do that? Because editors-in-chief of journals who first read your paper, they don't have that much time to read through the whole paper. So basically, they might just read the abstract or they read the introduction, okay, at the background, and then they'll decide, okay, whether they want to send it out for peer review or not. So if you leave it towards the end and the editor doesn't see your contribution and all, then he might just reject your paper. Okay, so that's not to your advantage at all. Secondly, try to structure the manuscript correctly. Okay, follow the journal style guide. Okay, they will have a typical style in terms of the headlines, the values, the tables, the figure captions, everything. Okay, how they want it to be. So just try to follow the guidelines as far as possible. So here's a suggested structure for scientific papers. Okay, um, it's just a suggested structure, so it's something that you may see it has been different from other journals because every journal will be a little bit different. So just try to structure or have it structured according to how the journal wants it. Okay. So after talking about ABCs of writing, now you should start also preparing other aspects of the manuscript. So in terms of the title, okay, title of the paper and the article, try to make it a meaningful and helpful title. Okay, meaningful in the sense that readers would immediately, okay, readers as in academic researchers in your field would immediately understand where are you situating your research in, okay, in which area of the discipline or the field or in which region, okay. So that will be meaningful and helpful in the sense that for readers who don't have much time, they can actually read the title and then immediately sense that this is a paper I should read or I should not read. Okay, so try to make it short and descriptive. Okay, typically if they are short, they are viewed and cited more frequently. Okay, I stated here maximum length, no 16 words, but it may not necessarily be the case for certain journals. Okay, but nevertheless, try to make it short and descriptive, but don't make it too short, too clever, like 3 to 5 words only. That will be difficult. Okay, difficult for readers to really guess. Okay, I mean if they only have so much time every time they do a search. So if they see that the title is so short and not very meaningful or helpful, then definitely they're not going to read your paper. Okay. So I mentioned about leaving out the filler words, evidence of, effect of, comparison of. Okay, so if possible, those that can be leave out. But if you feel there is a need to include, then of course, then you can do that too. Do not include new abbreviations or acronyms, okay, unless those are commonly known in the field itself. Okay, so if you include them in, people might be scratching their head and what is this abbreviation? What does it stand for? Okay, of course, if they're curious enough, they'll read it, read the abstract and try to find out more. But still, as far as possible, it's not useful. Okay, you can include such abbreviations in the keywords, but preferably not in the title of the paper itself, unless it's something that is so novel, you discover a new method or new theory, then of course then you can do that. Then secondly, talking about the abstract itself, you have to summarize the main sections of the paper in the abstract itself. Okay, for example, the introduction, materials, methods, results, discussion, this conclusion. Okay, so typically the abstract will have a word limit, so keep it within the word limit. And this is also important because, like I mentioned earlier, the journal editors would not have much time to read through the whole paper. So the abstract itself would inform them, okay, whether this is a good paper to peer review or not. And then the third part of the preparation would be the keywords. Okay, so you will usually need to provide 4 to 8 keywords, okay, or phrases to ensure that the article would be easily discovered by researchers. Okay, who are looking for similar topics to write on, to cite on. Okay, so it's good to also look at those good papers that have been published and see what are the typical keywords that they use. Okay, so you can use so copy some of their keywords if there's something that you're discussing it in your paper too. Okay. There are some journals that will give you a list of keywords to choose from. Okay, so this is something you have to keep in mind. Okay, so you don't create your own keywords if they ask you to choose the keywords. Now, of course, after you have sort of finalized the manuscript, okay, you can look at preparing the cover letter. Okay, sometimes the cover letter is required. Sometimes it can be something that you send in an email. So it all depends on the journal itself, what they prefer, okay, to receive. So particularly, we will want to have the structure of the letter structured in this manner. Okay, they have 2 sections and also a closing paragraph. So of course, in the first section, you introduce yourself and then state the name of the manuscript of the paper, what type of manuscript is it? It's a review article, a research article, a rapid report, things like that. And then describe the rationale, okay, and the major findings from the research. So at the start, you need to tell the reader, the journal editor, well, what is the reason for you of doing the research, okay, of this paper, and what were the major findings, okay. Then after that, of course, you can explain why is it a good fit for the journal itself, okay. Typically, you can say that the journal has published similar topics in the past, or there's a gap, gap in the literature. So this is something you can think about when you're writing the letter. Try to address the aspects of the journal's aim and scope, okay, just to let the journal editor know that the paper is within the scope of the journal. And then link with other articles you have read in the journal. So you can link it back or cite the various articles that have been published in that journal itself. And towards the end, when you close, you just let the editor know that the manuscript is original. Okay, so it has never been published before, and it's not under consideration, okay, with any other journals. Okay, so for journals, it will always be an exclusive submission. You can only submit your paper to one journal at any one time. Okay, so why is there a need to peer review journal articles? Why can't we just let the journal editors decide, and then they will allow go ahead to publish it? So the main reason is to allow the research, okay, to be evaluated independently by the experts, okay, who are familiar with what you've done, okay. So to ensure, the article is sound, accurate, give you some feedback, let you know if there are any errors that they spot, and also start a discussion, to see, uh, why are you writing in this? Why are you writing, or why are you doing a research in this area? And to sort of confirm that the argument or the theory they have made is acceptable, okay, among the scholarly community, okay. So the peer review models that we have for journals are typically either single blind or double blind, okay. For single blind, it just means that the author of the journal article would not know the identity of the reviewers, okay. For double blind, both the authors and the reviewers will know the identity of each other, okay. So they just refer to them as uh, author A, author B, or reviewer A, reviewer B, okay. So in terms of single blind, it's typically used among science journals and some social sciences. Double blind is similarly for social sciences and humanities, okay. So there is a third type of peer review model, which is called open peer review. Okay, so in that model itself, both the authors and reviewers know each other's identity. Okay, so there is a small number of journals that adopt such a peer review model. Seems that it's growing, but we will see whether it's something that is actually acceptable, okay, for other journals. And there is also a new so-called peer review movement that is called post-publication peer review. Okay, so what happens is the article is actually published online first. Okay, it's published first, and then it's subjected to open peer review. Okay, so basically the reviewers will just read the paper online, and then publish their comments. Okay, their suggestions and comments online too, within the article, and the author will have to address them, okay, address any comments and any issues or concerns, and then of course revise the manuscript accordingly and publish a revised version, okay. So this will go on maybe one or two rounds until the journal editors decides, okay, that's enough. We can now finalize the paper itself, okay, then so you won't carry on with any more reviews, okay. So this is how the post-publication peer review works. So in terms of the review stages, actually there are two stages. The first stage is desk review. The second stage is external peer review. Okay, at the first stage of desk review, when you first submit online or through an email your paper or manuscript, the editor-in-chief will assess. Okay, they will assess it. They will look at the manuscript and they will think, okay, is this manuscript within the scope of the journal itself? And then they will also read a little bit of the abstract introduction, and maybe if they have time, a bit of the conclusion too, okay, to check if the English language expression is good and understandable. And if they think, if they think is good and is suitable, is within scope, and they like the paper, then of course they'll send out to peer review. Okay. So the acceptance rate at this stage can vary a lot according to the discipline. Okay, for the social sciences, the acceptance rate typically for those uh, journals focus or journals heavy disciplines can be quite low. Okay, simply because most researchers can only publish journal articles to be counted for their tenure assessment or promotion assessment. So there's a higher percentage of researchers trying to publish with the top journals. Okay, so the top journals will receive a large number of submissions, but of course they do have a budget. They can't publish every single article they receive, so they have to reject a large majority of these submissions at the desk review stage. Okay, for other humanities, okay, humanities, it could be the case that they prefer to have a book rather than a journal article. So for humanities journals, perhaps it might be lower, not because the quality is worst off. It's just that there are lesser submissions, so they can actually accept and publish, okay, more journal articles. Okay, so this is something you need to keep in mind. So try not to compare the acceptance rates uh, between different disciplines. You just compare it between the same level of journals, okay, in terms of hierarchy, same level of journals within your own discipline, okay, to see which are the ones you hope to publish in. So typically it can take around 1 day to 7 days, or sometimes even 2 weeks, to get a reply from the editor-in-chief in terms of whether they are happy to send it out for review. Okay, and if they do, then of course they have to invite two experts, okay, referee A and referee B, to comment on the manuscript. And it takes about 3 to 10 weeks, okay, 3 to 10 weeks to complete the review. The timeline can vary between various journals. Okay, so it all depends. Okay, because certain journals, they might be a very specialized field itself, so there are less experts to rely on to review your paper. So it might take a longer time. For other fields, there are a lot more researchers working in that field. There, of course, they have a bigger pool of referees to rely on, okay, to review the papers. So the editor-in-chief, or one of the editors of the journal, will make a decision after the two comments or reports from the referees are written. Okay, so this is basically how it works in terms of desk review and peer review. Okay, so what happens after the review is completed? Okay, so do keep in mind that reviews are always, okay, requested, can be accept without change, or accept with minor revision or major revisions, revise and resubmit or reject the paper. Okay, so revise and resubmit is a very common decision, okay, made by the editor after reading through or checking the reports from the two reviewers. Okay, this is something that you would actually expect to have. Okay, sometimes you may get a decline. So from usually that will only happen when both referees recommend not going ahead with any revision at all. Okay, so it just means that the editor in chief may have made a serious mistake lah in terms of sending out for peer review. Okay, so usually that should not happen. It's more of a revise and resubmit decision. Okay, so if you do get a revise and resubmit, then you should be quite happy. That just means that you will most likely be able to publish in the paper. It's just a matter of how long it takes, okay, to complete the revisions. Okay, sometimes it can be a minor revision, such as do some language editing or new citations, new topics, or new experiments, or how you interpret the results. But also it can also be major revisions. Okay, that means structural issues. Okay, that means you have to reorganize the whole text again. Okay, and then rewrite them. And sometimes they will say, oh, more experiments needed. Okay, new topic needs to be introduced, and also a new argument. And or they can say, oh, I just realized that your statistical analysis, there's some errors. Your assumption is wrong. You need to do this, you need to do that. That will result in you spending a lot more time to do the so-called revision of paper before you can actually resubmit it back to the readers again for a round of revision reviews. Okay. So after you have completed the revision of the paper, you will of course need to provide a response letter to address the comments and suggestions from the referees. Okay, so do be respectful, tactful. Okay, acknowledge the time and care the referees have taken, to review and write up the comments. Do be aware that they are not paid to do so. It's a voluntary work in a sense, and engage positively and constructively with the criticisms. Okay, don't be too defensive or aggressive. Of course, sometimes the referees can be a bit too critical, or sometimes they even have some uh, personal attacks. Sometimes you may experience some personal attacks. Okay, of course, a good editor will of course censor those out. But if you don't see them, don't get so aggressive about it. Just let it be professional. Okay, especially if you're a early career scholar. Okay. You can respond to all the suggestions or the concerns of the both referees either by common themes or individually. Okay, that means you address the concerns of referee A first, and then you go on to referee B, or you can combine them together and say referee A and referee B says this, and this is what I will do. Okay, let the editors, the journal editors, and the referee know what you agree with, what you disagree with. Okay, it doesn't necessarily means that if you are no all the suggestions that the referee made, you have to agree to them. Okay, if you don't agree with it, then of course substantiate. Okay, why you think it's not agreeable, or that something you cannot be done. Okay, it's too outside of the scope of the paper. Okay, things like that. As far as possible, try to provide a very detailed list of changes that you have made. Okay, this could avoid the need for further peer review. In the sense that after you complete the revision, you send it back to the referees. It could have been 6 months later, and to have totally forgotten about the paper. So when they read it again, they might find out new things to comment on, to criticize on. Okay, so that is something we try to avoid as much as possible. So by giving them a detailed list of changes, they will just need to refer to those changes and then say yes, no, or provide other additional comments with respect to those changes that were suggested. Mhm. In the event that you are actually rejected, I mean, the paper was rejected by the journal editor, don't be too sad. Okay, take it as an opportunity to improve the paper. Just try to read the referee's report and, of course, the editor's comments and suggestions carefully. Okay, establish the reasons. Okay, why was it rejected? Okay, is it a journal scope, flaws in writing, fundamental issues? Okay, address them. Okay, make sure you revise them fully. Okay, before revise the paper fully according to what was suggested before you submit it to another journal. Okay, that more often than not, that other journal might also go back to the same reviewer, the same referee, to review the paper again. And if that referee saw that you have not made any changes at all, then it's almost going to be another round of rejection. Yeah. Okay. So this is something to keep in mind. So now for open access, okay, here's a very simple or early definition of open access. Basically, it just refers to the research outputs that are freely available on the internet. It allows anyone, okay, to download, read, do anything to it, and it can be indexed by any web spiders and passed on as data. And as long as it's lawful, you can use them. There will be no financial, legal, or technical barriers, okay, in terms of accessing such research. So basically for Cambridge, we have signed more than 100, okay, more than 100 transformative agreements or read and publish agreements with 1,000 institutes in more than 30 countries, okay. So this covers nearly 50% of our journal research authors. Within the sciences, social sciences, and humanities, we publish more than 350 journals, okay. Out of them, we have 59 fully Go open access journals. Okay, so these journals are fully Go open access. Okay, so there's no paywall in terms of reading the papers. Okay, you can just go to those journals and read them. There's no need to subscribe to those journals. However, the rest of the journals that we have are called hybrid journals, so they still need either a subscription or a TA read a publish agreement to read them. Okay, but we are also allowing authors to publish their article as open access in this group of journals. Okay. So in terms of books and elements, we also have published quite a substantial number, more than 180. Okay, majority is in the social sciences and humanities, as you can imagine. Okay, so the advantages of open access is more exposure, wider reach, higher citations, and more downloads. Okay? So for us, we also have some new journal concepts, okay, to take advantage of this new movement. We have prisms, flow, experimental results, research directions. Okay, so actually some of them are interdisciplinary, some of them are multidisciplinary. But whatever the case, you will see more research being published out of these few models in the next 5 years. And of course, we are aiming, okay, we are aiming. We may not be able to do so, but we're aiming to convert all of our journals to open access by the end of 2025. So these are the web homepages of some of the new OA journals that I've mentioned. And in terms of Chinese University of Hong Kong, we have a transformative agreement, a real published agreement, okay, under the JULEC consortium. So current faculty, you can publish without paying for it in our Go and hybrid journals. You can click on this link here just to see which are the journals that you can publish in. So you can also access to all of our journals content. Okay. How can you publish your article as open access in our journals? Basically, you will need to be a corresponding author, okay, of the journal article. It has to be original research, and it has to be accepted for publication in the journal that is covered by the agreement. And it has to be accepted from 1st of January 2021 onwards. Okay, so if you have any additional, questions with respect to the steps, okay, you can also contact your librarian, which I have inserted the email address here. So for subject hubs within OA journals, we have archaeology, anthropology, computer science, and even politics and international relations. And if you need any language editing services, we also have a partnership with American Journal experts, okay, who can help you with language editing, translation, formatting, things like that. And of course, that comes to the end of my presentation. And now, of course, we can take any questions that you have. Just, yeah, let me know. So the list of the journals, if you click on the link, you will see it here. So you have to be within the network of your university so that you can see the content, okay? These are the journals that you have access to. In terms of the journals that you want to publish in, typically it should be the same. But what you can do is just click on it under waiver and discount, enter Hong Kong and Chinese University of Hong Kong, and then you can view it. And click on this, you will see all the journals, okay? If I'm not wrong, it's around 357 journals that are covered by the agreement itself. Okay. Yes, we will share the PowerPoint slides with all of you, so don't worry about that. And if you can, if you are able to, I will be happy for you to also scan this and provide your survey, okay, so that we can improve our, presentation in the future. We do want to, engage more researchers at Chinese University of Hong Kong. Any other questions? Can be on anything with regards to publishing. not just journals, books, or anything that you want to know about Cambridge. I can also uh, provide answers. So on this web page, you can also see, what the steps to do. Okay, basically how to, once the paper has been accepted by the journal, what are the steps to do to actually process the paper as go open access. And you also can search and filter the subject itself that you publish in. Mhm. Okay. Okay, I have a question in the Q&A. To your knowledge, okay, this is from Jacob Thomas. To your knowledge, are the costs of printing black and white and color photos very high for the journals? I recently submitted a paper with 6 images, mostly in color, to a journal that had a paper with 2 colored photos, but I was not sure if it was too much. I asked them and they did not respond. Uh, okay, so basically, because most journals are going digital nowadays, typically it won't be more costly to so-called typeset a color figure or color image in a journal online. So the cost actually, the high cost actually come from printing a color images in a physical or paper issue. Okay, so that was in the past, but nowadays it all depends on the journal itself. What you can do is you can just go into the submission guidelines. Okay, the submission guidelines, they should have an area or a section to advise you about the images. Okay, whether they will accept only black and white figures or they are happy to also accept color images. Certain journals I know of, they do actually charge because they are still printing paper issues. So that's the reason why they have to so-called cover the cost of printing. But if it's a pure digital, the kind of journal itself, then typically it shouldn't be more expensive, and typically it shouldn't cost, shouldn't there shouldn't be any color charges. Yeah. So unless they have stated clearly on the submission guidelines that there will be color charges, but otherwise they may just advise you, if it's not necessary, then could you perhaps uh, uh, print it as a grayscale image when we do publish it as a paper issue, or otherwise if it's just a digital journal issue, then it should be fine. Yeah, shouldn't be fine. Shouldn't be an issue. Okay, Alice is asking about suggested reviewers. Okay, so certain journals, they may come back to you and ask you for suggested reviewers. Okay, as in provide them a list of referees that they can approach to review your papers. Okay, so clearly the first thing you have to keep in mind is conflict of interest. Okay, make sure that those reviewers you wish to um, suggest are not your friends, your supervisors, or somebody working in the same university as yourself. Okay, so friends, I mean, as in very good friends, very close friends. But if they are, fellow researchers in another university, then wouldn't be an issue. As far as possible, you try to find someone who is familiar with the research that you are working on. Um, it might be the case that it's better to seek out either more senior scholars or people who you have actually worked with, but I mean, in a professional sense, lah, not in a personally, to which you think they will be fair in assessing your paper. Okay, so basically, you can do a search, of the journal, go through the journal, and do a keyword search. Okay, see if there are any similar papers published in the past by that author, and then you can include that author as part of the list of reviewers. So this might be the case that you have to go through a few journals, okay, to find out, to seek out, uh, people's researchers that have also worked on the same topic as yourself, okay, so that uh, it, they would be more familiar, okay, more familiar with the topic. Yeah. Okay, Ling Han is asking about the steps and process of publishing a book manuscript for social sciences. Okay, so basically, actually, if you are interested to find out more, I've I will enter my email address. You can just email me directly. Basically, the process is a little bit different. Okay, in the sense that you will need to approach the acquisitions editor or the commissioning editor directly, and you will need to either have a full proposal, a book proposal in hand, or the manuscript. Okay, typically there will also be a desk review, a peer review. Okay, except that it will take a much longer time. Okay, much longer time to review and also to publish the book, because a book is the format is a bit different. It is a longer in length, and then the readership will also be much wider. Okay, so we do want to ensure that the quality is up there. So typically need to prepare a proposal, so you can just email me, and then I can send you the guidelines. And it might not be the case that I would be the editor, because sometimes another editor of our team in the UK or US is more familiar with the topic itself, so they might be interested in taking on the project. Okay, so the easiest way is to just recheck through our email. Just send me an email, and I'll send you the guidelines. And maybe if you tell me a little bit more about a project, then I can advise you whether it's something that we are interested in. Yeah. Okay. Okay, I see a Q&A. Okay. Okay. Jacob asked about the recent publications of a journal. Okay. How far back should you go? 1, 5, or 10 years? Okay. Do you just look at titles or abstract or articles? I see. It can be informative, but also time consuming. I would say in terms of looking at recent publications, it also depends on the discipline itself. Okay. If this is a topic that is fast developing, okay, for the last few years, then perhaps it's good to just look at the last 1 or 2 years. But if it's a topic that is a bit slow in terms of new developments or new research coming out, then perhaps it will need to look a bit further back, maybe 5 years. But I don't think you need to go back to so far back as 10 years, okay? Because I think certain research may have already so-called lost favor or been overtaken by the new research. So um, for fast developing topics such as something related to technology, probably maybe the last 2 years would be good enough. Okay, because there's definitely a lot of new articles or research coming out. For the others, maybe 3 to 5 years back, then it should be enough for you to to check if it's a suitable journal for you to submit in. Okay, so do you just look at the abstract titles or the whole article itself? I would say you just look at the title and stretch. That would be more than enough. Okay, so but of course you spot a very interesting article. You can of course read the whole article and see if it's something you can also cite it, or describe it in your paper. But otherwise, you just need to look at the title and stretch, and more or less you can uh, uh, assess, whether this is a good journal that you want to publish in. Yeah.